What's the most dangerous animal on the planet?
Sharks.
White people.
Oh.
When are white people most dangerous?
And they're teamed up with sharks.
When they feel uncomfortable.
You're seeing clips from a film by a Fort Wayne native and Snyder High School graduate Kobe Libby. It's called The American Society of Magical Negroes. The new film has a bit of comedy, fantasy, and a love story, all wrapped around racial issues. The Cinema Center will be having a special screening tomorrow night, with Libby doing a virtual Q&A after. Before that, he talked with 21 Alive's John Wagner.
We have something really cool tonight on the news at 7. Kobe Libby is joining me. And Kobe, when this story first kind of came across our desk, my news director said, hey, there's a director of a movie that's coming out, and he's going to be doing an event at the Cinema Center, and I think we should do that story. I didn't know what the movie was. I didn't know who the director was. And I'm so excited that it was you. Can you tell us a little bit about the movie?
Yeah, sure. The movie is called The American Society of Magical Negroes. And it was a satire about being Black in America, about movies. And it starts with the magical Negro trope, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's sort of a stereotypical character that shows up in movies. It's a Black best friend character or a wise old Black guy who comes in with a little bit of advice. And the criticism of it as a stereotype in Hollywood is that it sort of reduces Black characters to a secondary role. Where they're always sort of serving a white protagonist. And my film is a satire, poking fun at this stereotype, but also talking about my particular experience growing up as a Black person in America. So it's a big, fun, irreverent comedy about those kind of things.
So I mentioned, like, I didn't know what the movie was or who the director was, or really the subject matter of the movie. And when I did my research a little bit, I was like, well, you know, maybe we should have somebody Black on staff do this interview. But then I realized that's actually sort of one of the central themes about this movie is the feeling of the need to make white people comfortable. And I thought, well, maybe let's just confront that and I'll do the interview regardless.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, this is, politically one of the themes of the movie is a request that comes up in America to center white comfort as opposed to Black stories. And to put it in a news context, since, you're a local news station, there's this story coming out of Florida in the last couple of years about curriculum and explicitly trying to legislate, curriculum away to remove stories about Black history that explicitly make white students uncomfortable. And so this conversation about when white people are comfortable and what Black stories make white people comfortable and what Black behaviors make white people comfortable, it's terrifically relevant, which is part of what the satire is about.
So I know that this title of the film was not offhand. You're actually forcing people to say the word Negro. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided, yeah, that's going to be the title?
Well, first of all, it's the name of the trope, and just to be clear about it, Spike Lee is the one who coined this term, magical Negro, just in observing a run of movies in the 90s that sort of had this stock character, right? And part of what the film is about, as I was just talking about with the story in Florida, is a discrepancy in comfort moving through the world, right? There is a discomfort that a lot of Black people have in white spaces, in spaces where we're not the majority. And I think a lot of people who have felt othered from whatever that background is that makes them feel othered, have felt slightly pushed to the side, have felt pressure to assimilate into a dominant culture, are sort of familiar with that experience. And there is a very common thing when you're that person that you have to do all the time, which is, it's called double consciousness, right? Which is sort of, you have to think about how you might authentically move through the world. And you also have to think about how the dominant group might receive everything you're doing and saying.
Of course, with a movie coming out, you're going to be doing a lot of press like you're doing right now. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your experience of white interviewers, white folks confronting having to say that word? Have they said, before they started rolling, like, hey, I just want to make sure this is okay? Have you had to have that conversation?
It's funny. I have seen a couple of white interviewers sort of like glitch out just a little bit as they're sort of running up to the word. And again, look, that's part of the satire, that sort of new experience for I think for white interviewers. But look, it's a story about moving to the foreground characters who are often pushed into the background and centering, in my case, a Black experience in a culture that sometimes is more comfortable centering white experiences. And part of what I think is interesting about the discomfort around the word is I made a Black film about my experience moving through the world that I think everybody can relate to in a lot of ways.
I'm a really big fan of comedy, and not just like comedy films, but comedians and the craft that they have. And I know that most of comedy sort of stems from discomfort, so that's a huge part of the film. But I wanted to ask you, so you're delivering sort of a heavy theme on the back of comedy and on the back of somewhat a love story plotline too. Was that sort of your way of crafting this heavier topic as something more digestible for more people?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is comedy makes it possible to talk about really difficult subject matter. And anytime you're talking about race in America, it's going to make people uncomfortable, and it's going to make different racial audiences uncomfortable in different ways, But I believe the conversation this film is having is a really important conversation. And I personally, I want to go to movies that are fun and that are enjoyable. And when I get to the end, I feel like I've had a really moving and joyful experience. I also, though, want to go to movies that have something to say.
So let's talk about Fort Wayne and sort of how growing up here might have informed certain things in this film for you. What is sort of your experience as a Black person growing up in Fort Wayne?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that, I remember Klan rallies in Fort Wayne when I was a kid, right? That still happened, and I think that it is a community that I experienced a tremendous amount of love in, and I experienced a tremendous amount of love and mentorship from white people in Fort Wayne, many of whom are still there, but it is a community that has sort of, like all communities in America, wrestled with racism, and this film is very much about my experience growing up in America. And my experience growing up in America was growing up in Fort Wayne, so that is to say that I think it has tremendous empathy for everybody. I think it has tremendous empathy for Black people. I think it has tremendous empathy for white people. So I'm really excited for Fort Wayne to meet this film, because I don't think it's says anything more specifically about Fort Wayne than it does about anywhere else in America. But because this is a place that shaped me, I believe it's something that'll resonate with folks in that community too. And Cinema Center is the art house theater in Fort Wayne. It's the art house theater in Northeast Indiana. So it's where I saw, Almodovar for the first time. It's where I saw, John Cameron Mitchell for the first time. There's all of these incredible filmmakers that I just didn't have access to, that Cinema Center made it possible for me to have access to. So, I think for a community its size, Fort Wayne actually is an incredible art scene, that I was very grateful to be nourished by as a kid. And I'm very excited to be able to bring the film back to Fort Wayne and Cinema Center specifically, and hope people will come check it out.
Before I let you go, for the screening tomorrow, if anybody's going, is there any kind of like Easter egg inside the film? Anything sort of people can pick out if they're looking closely? Anything sort of hidden there?
I'm trying to think if there's probably some, Fort Wayne's such a part of my world. I was trying to think if there's some like quiet reference in there, you know what I mean, to anything from the hometown specifically,
Slip in some scent lever branding or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A quiet DeBrands reference or something. I don't not that I'm consciously aware of, but I'll have a think about it, and I'll see if there's a Fort Wayne Easter egg. I'll tell everybody in the talk back. So that's my tease for the talk back.
That's perfect.
I'm sure if I give it 24 hours, I'll figure out something that is like deeply influenced by Fort Wayne, Indiana, and. Actually, you know what? There's one image. So this is my tease. There's one image in the film that. Speaking of Maple Crest, there's one image in the film that is drawn specifically from a thing that happened to me at the Burger King on Maple Crest. This is by right by the across the street from that Kroger and the skis, the Scots. I don't know what it is now, but there is like one scene that is specifically this is like a thing. There's an image in my brain from that Burger King, and if you come to the talkback. And ask me after the talk back, I will tell you what that image is, but you have to come see the film.
Kobe Libby, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time for us. Again, this amazing screening will be happening tomorrow night at Cinema Center. You'll be doing a live Q&A afterwards. Congratulations on the release, and thank you for taking some time for 21 Alive. We'll see you when you come home next.
Awesome, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Yeah.
And a special screening of the American Society of Magical Negroes featuring a live virtual Q&A with Libby afterwards. That's tomorrow night at 7 at the Cinema Center downtown. You can get tickets on their website.